Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit TRE.radio.
Discuss, challenge, inform, comment, viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe.
Giles Brown.
Live comment and discussion with studio guests. Viewpoint.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, the 25th of July. Listen to Viewpoint, Talk Radio Europe's current affairs program with a panel of invited guests discussing the issues of the day. We're going to be looking, no surprises, for guessing what are the results and the fallout from the Spanish election. Inconclusive, I think we can agree. Or do we? Let me know. 952 78 4000 is the phone number. Studio at TRE.radio is the email. Joined in the studio by Andres Gallardo and any second now, Claudio de la Torre. If you want to get involved with today's show and comment on this or anything else that is breaking, that is crossing your radar, then these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
So then let's have a look at what's making the front pages in the UK this morning. Rhodes, Holiday Terror, and George Agalaya tributes. Looking at the front pages today, many of them leading with these fires in Greece. Times leads on the Rhodes wildfires. Reports that 30,000 people from the UK have been left in holiday limbo by the disaster on the Greek island. It says damage to resorts is likely to cause a spate of cancellations for those hoping to travel there in the next few weeks. The paper's leader argues that the chaos exposed a worrying degree of unpreparedness on the part of the authorities. That theme is picked up in the editorial column of Daily Express. It points out that while this summer has been extreme, parts of Greece have had forest fires before. Travel firms should, it concludes, have better contingency plans. The Eye says Consumer Group, which has described airlines as deeply irresponsible for continuing to fly customers into the emergency zone, which is quoted as saying, firms allowed people to travel even though they knew their hotels were closing down. The Sun has a 2-page spread with pictures of charred remains of poolside lounges and parasols and holidaymakers sleeping on the floor of the airport in Rhodes. The headline is, how could they fly us into this? Meanwhile, the Daily Mail leads with a claim that some lawyers in the UK are charging up to £10,000 to submit false asylum and human rights claims for illegal immigrants. It alleges that staff at several firms were willing to help an undercover reporter pose as an economic migrant, despite being told he had no legitimate right to stay in Britain after arriving on a small boat. The Solicitors Regulation Authority tells the paper that all solicitors should uphold high professional standards, especially in areas such as immigration, where those involved may be among the most vulnerable in society. Many of the papers mark the death of the BBC newsreader George Alagaya. The Mirror describes him as gentle, kind and brave, saying he was the unflappable face of BBC News, loved by colleagues and viewers alike for his warmth and empathy. Writing in the Daily Telegraph, the presenter Fiona Bruce says George Alagaya set the gold standard for newsreaders, highlighting in particular his integrity, humour and kindness. The Eye describes him simply as a broadcasting giant. Looking at those front pages again then, from the top today. Daily Telegraph, bank boss pressured to launch Farage leak inquiry. And also a photograph of a Greek firefighter rescuing rabbits. Irresponsible airlines flew tourists into wildfire zone. That's the Eye. The Times, 300,000 left in holiday limbo over Rhodes fires. They've also got a picture of Charlotte Owen, who's become the youngest peer, took a seat in the House of Lords yesterday as Baroness Owen of Alderley Edge. She was nominated by Boris Johnson after serving as a special advisor to him at number 10. Meanwhile, Daily Express, race to rescue Britons in Greek wildfires nightmare. They've got a tribute as well to the death of Trevor Francis. He was Britain's first £1 million footballer. The Sun, Trevor was one in a million. as Saudi's astonishing 259 million bid for Mbappe is accepted. They're talking about Trevor Francis, who made a transfer history when he became the first £1 million player. Night of the roads, Brit Dad makes several trips into danger zone to rescue stranded families. This is a British father who used his holiday rental car to rescue families from the rental zone, so he's making the front pages. A Guardian, climate crisis linked to heatwave fires undeniable, says scientists. Analysis shows human-caused global temperatures rises to blame for destruction. The Daily Mail, they're banging on about the lawyers charging up to £10,000 to make false asylum claims. Meanwhile, judicial curbs, Israel riven by rising defiance. That's theirs. And finally, the Daily Star. Daily Star takes a different approach to the other papers, featuring a front page about the world's cleverest boffins, claiming a satellite image could prove an alien spaceship crashed on Mars. An update from those pointy heads at NASA. We can't, it's the Star, we can't rule out there's a spaceship crashed on Mars. And those, for better or worse, are your headlines this Tuesday, the 25th of July.
The weather forecast is brought to you by Liberty Seguros. Liberty Seguros, the #1 preferred expat insurer, has more than 200 dedicated expat agents and brokers who understand your needs and speak your language. The weather on Talk Radio Europe. Find us at TRE.radio.
And let's have a look at what your weather doing today. Costa del Sol, 28 degrees and sunny. The high's going to be 34. The winds are from the west and they are moderate. Granada, 23 degrees. The high today is going to be 34. Sunny day in prospect with moderate westerlies. Almeria, 26 degrees, sunny. High of 31. Winds from the south, which are moderate. Murcia, 30 degrees already. The high's going to be 37. Sunny, as you might expect. Winds from the north, which are variable, moderate to strong. Alicante, already 30 degrees. The high today in Alicante is going to be 32, though. Sunny day in prospect with southeasterlies, which are moderate. Denia, 28 degrees, mainly sunny, a high of 30, and winds from the northeast, which are moderate to strong. Over on the islands, Ibiza, 29 degrees, sunny spells at the high of 30. Winds from the northeast, which are moderate. Meanwhile, Mallorca, it's currently 28 degrees in Palma, mainly sunny with a high of 29. The winds are from the west, and again, they're moderate. And finally, Gibraltar, 23 degrees on the rock, mainly sunny today with a high of 30, and moderate to strong southwesterlies. And that's your weather.
The weather on Talk Radio Europe. Find us at TRE.radio.
Viewpoint with
Giles Brown.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And those are the numbers. Joined in the studio by Andres Gallardo. Andres, good morning to you.
Good morning, Giles. Good morning to you.
Oh, blimey.
Oh.
Blew the speakers there, sorry.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Shall I start again? Good morning, Giles.
Good morning to you, Claudia. Good morning to you, Claudia. Andres, sorry,
yes,
you Claudia at the same time. Yes, you know how it is. Well, are you well?
I am well, and I'm joining you here to pass comment on the last general election in Spain.
Say what you like about Spain, but the elections are never boring, are they? Let's face it. I mean, it was supposed to be. This wasn't how people were expecting it to go, were they?
No, if we go back to last week, the polls were predicting that the two parties to the right spectrum of the politics, i.e. the Conservative PP and Vox, on the extreme right, could form a coalition and govern the country for the next 4 years. Sunday night came, and what happened there was that the two parties, the PP saw an enormous growth from 89 seats to 136, and it's an increase of 47 seats in Parliament. That makes them the winner of the election. However, if they were to form a coalition with Vox, the numbers don't add up to be able to form government.
Right.
So that's where. So although they were happy because they won the election, PP, they realised quickly that they have no chance of forming government. So in a way, is a bittersweet victory. On the other hand, Sanchez had a decent result because he went from 120 seats in Parliament to 122. Yeah. So has small growth there, to the surprise of most pollsters, where they were predicting he would go down in a number of seats.
Yeah, indeed. We've got a caller on the line. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE.
Good morning.
What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Kate.
Morning to you, Kate.
A point of information just at the outset of this. I got the figures from the four groups, and what it didn't give was what the Catalans have got. And today's news is suddenly the Catalans have come out with an offer of a help to the SOE team. Here's my pitch. What I understand from today's news, they're saying they're so worried about Vox that they're prepared to help out on the SOE side.
Right, the PL, yeah. Okay, so they're coming out along, helping out the socialists so that the Vox don't get in. But they took a bit of a battering, Vox anyway, but more so than. No,
I wasn't asking. I was just asking what the number of seats they got to know what kind of validity this offer had got.
Oh, right, okay, so the number of seats, let me just...
the Catalans?
Yeah.
The Catalans, they've got two pro-independence parties in Catalonia, the main ones. You've got the Esquerra, which is a left-wing party, which got 7 seats in this last election. And the other one was Junts, which is the conservative pro-independence party.
Puigdemont's party? No.
And that's Puigdemont party. They, Esquerra, the first one's already had some element of support for the Socialist Party in the last in the last Parliament. The question here is whether Puigdemont, the party called Junts for Catalonia, will be willing to deal with Sanchez. That's the big question there.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Basically, just to explain it a little bit on football terms, is we've got to the end of the extra time. We go to penalties, and the one who's going to take the penalties puts them on. So believe it or not, a guy who is wanted by the Spanish justice seems to be the one who's going to have the key to Sanchez being able to form government or not. If that doesn't happen, the most commentators this morning and in the papers, some of the papers anyway, they are predicting another general election in the very near future.
Yeah, they're talking November, I think, aren't they?
If they're unable to form government.
Thank you.
I'll just elaborate on this. The thing with the nationalist parties are they can lend support to Sanchez to form government, but it's not free votes. They do negotiate very hard to get benefits for the regions, which. In real terms, it doesn't seem awfully fair to regions who cannot get those kind of offers in terms of financing, in terms of better infrastructures, and so on. So that's where they, Sanchez will have to sort of negotiate to get the support. The difference with Puigdemont party is that what they want is independence referendum and complete amnesty for him so he can come back to Spain without being prosecuted by the courts.
That's one of the two, Catalan.
Now,
the other
both
one
things are things that they're not in the hands of Sanchez. The first one, the independent referendum, the independence referendum is one that the Spanish constitution will not allow. And the second one, if it's wanted by the justice, the government has no say in the justice system, which theoretically is completely independent from government.
Okay. Right.
And that's where they are on that side.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was a quick rundown for you. So there you go. Yes, indeed. 952-784-4000 is the phone number. Yeah, I mean, it does seem that a lot of people are saying, oh, well, so-and-so can be the kingmaker, but it's in limbo again, isn't it? I mean, it's basically, and we're here again, and we seem to be in this situation every time we have an election. It's probably since that we got rid of sort of, it was either the Partido Popular or PSOE, and now since we've had other parties sort of breaking in, we don't seem to get an absolute majority.
Well, if we look at, rather than looking at parties, we have to look at blocks now. Yeah. You've got the left side block and the right side block. The right side is now formed by two parties. Before there was three because Ciudadanos have disappeared, but now we've got two parties on the right side, which is the PP, conservative, more liberal type of party, centre-right, if you want to call it. Then we've got the Vox, which is on the far right. Yeah. And on the left side, you got the block of the leader would be the Socialist Party, Social Democrats, if you want to call them.
Yeah.
And then all of the parties to the left. But in Spain, don't forget that regional parties have got a big influence on the outcome of elections.
Yeah.
So you got the very strong two parties in the Basque Country, which is the nationalist Conservative Party of PNV, and then you got Bildu, which is the political arm of the old terrorist group ETA. And in Catalonia, I've just explained the two main independence parties there.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, in Catalonia, we've seen the lowest support for the pro-independence parties that we've seen for a long time in this last election, being the Socialist Party, the massive winner in Catalonia, which was a surprise to many.
Perhaps that's maybe those who are pro independence for Catalonia just not wanting to get involved with this general election as a protest, because obviously after what happened a couple of years ago, they might think, oh well, you know.
I think the vote in Catalonia is gone for the Socialist Party as a tactical vote, prevention against the PP being able to form government, because they perceive the PP to be against Catalonia, which is a perception that is not true, but that's the perception that they have there. The PP would be against Catalonia. So the tactical vote is to vote for the socialists, who are more willing to negotiate.
Sympathetic to
the cause,
yeah. No, not the cause, their demands, perhaps.
But more their demands than anything else.
I mean, look at what Rajoy did, you know, when they had the illegal referendum, and what was it, Article 155? Or, it's
Article 155, which
basically is governing from Madrid, you know, and that stoked unhappiness, should we say?
Yeah, but let's not forget that all the parties supported the Article 155, including the Socialist Party.
Yeah.
Pedro Sanchez was one of the ones who voted in favour of 155, because what they were doing there was breaking up the country against the Spanish constitution, completely illegal. So, I mean, there's no argument about that.
Yeah.
It's just that's what happened at the time. But again, the perception is that PP was the one who did it, when in fact it was all the other parties, you know, accepted that situation as not normal, and the constitution has got a mechanism to control. So
just a little bit off piste here, as they say. But so is Puigdemont? He's still in Brussels at the moment, is he? As far
Puigdemont is in Brussels.
He's going to make a triumphant return. You know, people throwing rose petals from balconies as he comes in down the Diagonal or whatever.
Yeah, Puigdemont has got a bit of a problem now, because the European Court recently said that he has no immunity as a member of the European Parliament, which means that now they can reissue the order of detention and extradition to Spain.
Everybody's had that house guest status.
So he's been hanging on to all the legal wrangles that he's been able to sort of grab to avoid having to be extradited to Spain, and I think it's got one more appeal, but eventually will have to come to Spain, of course. But now his 7 votes in Parliament mean a lot to Sanchez, and that may take I don't know how he can influence the fact that he's wanted by the justice, but we'll have to.
Well, I mean, basically, look, okay, you can come back. We won't prosecute you. Give us your votes.
He can't say that. Because the one who orders the prosecution is not the government, is the judge.
True.
And the judge is supposedly independent.
I was going to say, who would think a politician could possibly lean on a judge in Spain? I mean, that would be unheard of, wouldn't it? Basically, allegedly. Moving swiftly onwards. So let's have a look at what happened, because those are the parties that may have an influence. But when this was called, and if you look at the results from the municipal and the community votes, the autonomous communities, Partido Popular were and this is in layman's, giving them giving the PSOE a kicking, basically. So
yeah, I think strategically now, looking back, I think Sanchez was very clever actually to call the election, because rather than the talk of the Socialist Party having lost the election for months on end, he went on to call another campaign for a general election, which everyone stopped talking about the gains of the Popular Party. And one thing that was constantly reported from that municipal and regional elections was the coalitions that they were forming with Vox. Yes. I think a lot of the voters out there were more scared of having a coalition with Vox than the PP running the country, because Vox is perceived to be extreme right, racist, and so on.
Anti-climate change,
anti-everything. I mean,
Franco wasn't all bad. Look, we got the roads built, etc.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of talk, and people don't want to go back to that. And I think in this election there's been more tactical vote than in other elections. The reality is that if we have to repeat the election, this will be the 3rd time that happens in Spain in recent times, and it cannot be right for the country to have a strategy out there of repeating elections every time we go to vote. There must be a way. I mean, I know what most people would agree with me is the thing would be to let the PP winner of the election form government with the support from the outside, if you like, of the Socialist Party, with the aim of shutting Vox out of the, so Vox, so the extreme right don't got anything to say in policies to come forward. That seems to me quite reasonable. So the winner of the election is the one who forms government. That's reasonable. There are points that PP and PSOE can get agreement on things. Yeah. One being the budget. Yeah. That they can reach easily an agreement on budget and some policies as well, and freeze those where there is strong disagreements, and that would be viable. However, I don't think the PP or the PSOE are considering that option. I would be very, very surprised if they did. Yeah. But that would be the mature and more sort of reasonable, and a lot of people in Spain would agree with that. Even socialist voters would say, okay, well, they've won the election.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's interesting as well, isn't it? Because if you think about where we were 20 years ago when Podemos who also sort of disappeared off the political scale this time because of the new party, this brand new shiny party, which is Sumar, which has been launched, which is further onto the left of the PSOE, and by a charismatic front person. But you kind of think, this is it's great to have this many parties in many options, but you're going to get a situation where it is splintered and split. And how many of these parties are going to have a long-term future? If you look at what happened to Ciudadanos, who just have gone, but Podemos looks like it's going to be yesterday's man as well at the back of this, because you've got Sumar come on, which seems to be, the bright new shiny thing. Vox, who knows?
Vox has gone down on the number of seats in Parliament. It's gone from, I think they peaked at 52. Now they've gone down to 30 something. So I think they've reached their peak. Podemos also reached their peak when in the last election. Podemos now have been swallowed by this new party, so they are inside this Sumar new party. But again, they've lost a lot of seats there. So you probably find that eventually we go back to the two main parties, the Socialist and the Conservative, and they'll battle it out. What's not going away is the regional parties, which have got a lot of influence in central government.
The autonomous communities, etc.
And the exact example here is what's happening at the moment. Sanchez could get the numbers in Parliament if he can reach an agreement with 7 other parties, so his party plus other 7, and that must be, and everyone wanting something for their votes. They're just going to have to go with a big bag of sweets and start throwing them.
But you can argue
to get that support. It's a mammoth task, but Sanchez is. I don't know what's going to offer them, but the numbers are there to be taken if he can. And the end result is that if he can't get I can't see Puigdemont doing a deal with Sanchez. I just can't see it unless they get the independent referendum.
You get to the point with what they used to call in Germany real politics, Willy Brandt, etc., where you have to, what is it that Alpha says? Politics is the art of being in power and staying in power and whatever. Art of the possible. Or something like that. Anyway, so they're going to, they're going to have to cut deals. It's going to have to be a situation where there's a certain bit of what we call horse trading going on.
Totally. I mean, in politics, you have to negotiate and you have to give in on certain things, and it's been done in Spain always. I mean, Felipe González did it with the regional parties, with Pujol and the Basque country as well. Aznar, right wing, also dealt with the nationalists as well, giving concessions and so on. So it's not unusual for Spanish government to deal with the regional governments, to the regional parties, and giving certain things. The question on this particular one is that Puigdemont is so radical, and he truly all he wants is the independence of Catalonia, and if he doesn't get a say on that, he's not going to lend his votes, and that means that Sanchez cannot progress. However, they might do something that could resemble a referendum that is not, and to appease them, and maybe doing it that way they might get something. I don't know. I think if he did that, the rest of Spain would be very upset with Sanchez, and that may cost him, his post on another election.
Once again,
let's not forget as well, form government is one thing, and the other thing is to govern. Don't forget that then he will have to legislate and go back every time to these 7 different parties to convince them to vote in favour of what they're legislating. And that is going to be practically untenable for another 4 years. So if he manages to form government, my prediction will be that it's not going to last very long, because there will be constantly negotiating and not moving forward.
Well, I mean, the budget, isn't it? That's going to be the primary thing, surely.
The budget is one of the main things, but there's other legislation that they have to pass as things progress that they need doing, and just having to go back to 7 parties and trying to get their vote in favour could make it very, very difficult. Very difficult.
952 78 4000. Take a quick break and then back with more Viewpoint.
Viewpoint with Giles Brown.
Welcome back to Viewpoint. If you want to get involved with today's shows, these are numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Joined in the studio by Andres Gallardo with Claudia de Torre. Is on the way.
Really?
He's on the way, yes.
Wow.
We've been informed. He's probably, yes. I mean, Claudia, we're looking forward to Claudia's take on what happened over the weekend as well. Talking of which, looking at scenes from Partido Popular headquarters not now, I mean, just generally, don't look behind you. They weren't sure that. We go live to the phones, in fact. 952 78 4000. Morning, Claudia, live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Good morning, Giles.
Good morning, Alf. How are you?
Good morning, Alf.
Claudio. I'm fine. Sitting indoors in the sun, keeping out of the sun.
Right.
Should I say? So, well, I don't know where to start really, Andreas, because you say one thing one week and something completely different the following week.
Really?
Because yeah. You said that Sanchez may have tripped himself up by calling the election, and now you're saying, well, he was very clever to call the election. Where we all sit there and go, was he clever? Was he taking a chance? Was he putting the Spanish people behind the 8 ball? Who knows what was going on in his mind, because as I understand it, from my little involvement in Pasari, there wasn't a lot of consultation with the regions or anybody else. This was Sanchez and his little team around him making a decision based on that. So, yeah, I think sometimes you have to take the politics. Oh, and by the way, Giles, it's called... I've forgotten it myself now. Politics is about the ability to deliver. You can't deliver if you don't have power. The complication that always happens with the Spanish elections, and we've said this many times before, proportional representation creates a problem, and it will not go back, Andreas, it will not go back to a 2-party system. It's almost impossible in today's environment for there to be 2-party systems, almost in any country. Proportional people demanding my vote must count. It's not going to be long before. I mean, we see it in Britain because of the SNP. There'll never be a Labour government while Labour don't win seats in Scotland. Simple as that. So, creating these governments is the issue, and I think you've got it wrong. I think you've got it totally wrong. The PP need Vox. That's for certain. I'm not sure how many other parties would side with PP, even if it didn't involve Vox. I'm very uncertain that there's all these other right-wing people who are just fall into the PP category to give them a chance at government, irrespective. But Vox makes that almost impossible for those. And if you look on the left, there are certain issues, like you quite rightly say, I cannot see. It's a bit like the Labour Party saying we're going to do a deal with the SNP when we have totally opposed views on independence and referendums for independence. There's no midway. There's no compromise on that. And the same applies between Puigdemont and Pasari. There's no compromise on his position on Catalonia. No position whatsoever. No compromise. So that's never going to happen. So if you was put yourself in the position of Sanchez, who was technically
not lost the election. Oh, and by the way, you can't have such a thing as a bittersweet victory. It's either a victory or it's not a victory. And it wasn't a victory for PP because they never got enough to form a government in the way that everybody was predicting. So it's a pretty big loss.
Because otherwise I'll forget all the things I have to reply to you.
Fine, but let me just... The issue is, put yourself in Sanchez's position. Why would you, if you've just increased your number of seats, but only by a couple, but you increased it when the prediction was you were going to lose heavily, why would you bother to try to create and form some sort of government that you don't want to have? You don't want to have a connection with Catalonia because you will get criticised by the rest of Spain, so you'll lose even more seats. Why would you do a deal with anybody else? Why don't you just sit there and say, come on, PP, the prediction was that the country wanted you and the right-wingers form a government. See if you can, and you can't. And by the way, having wish lists, I wish that they would just give PP the government, irrespective that they haven't got a majority. You know, that's just disaster. So you can't just give somebody something and let them get on with it. That means everybody else has to sit aside and watch a minority party.
Felipe González did it.
Pardon?
Felipe González did it with Aznar.
How many years ago?
I was in the 90s, but...
Andreas, 30 years ago, you didn't have all the social media, you didn't have all the hype, you didn't have people... Fewer people take part in elections because they're much more aware of the position that the parliamentarians and political people put themselves in. So you can't compare what happened in the 90s. I'll go back to 97. I better not mention in that case.
Let's not mention let's not go to the 90s. Let's go to Germany now.
Germany now what? Go on. What? They've just had the longest running chancellor in their history, in Angela Merkel, and they're trying to re-establish how to run their country under a completely new administration. What did you expect? Did you expect overnight change that would just click over? It doesn't work like that. Yeah, when we moved from Labour to the Tories, well, it wasn't Labour to the Tories, it was a coalition, a failed coalition. And what did it do? All that did is damage politics in Britain for another 5 years, 6 years. And then we end up with the Brexit stuff that then created more damage to elections because fewer people then turn out because they say, well, we tell you MPs this is what we want, and then you don't do what we tell you what we want. And the same is applying... It sounds to me the same is applying in Spain. So you've got Sanchez trying to tell the people, which is what I always find wrong. I'm not being non-critical of PSOE. PSOE were trying to tell people what was best for them. And that's not how you win politics. You don't win politics by telling people what's best for them. You offer people a choice. And the choice is, if you vote for us, this is what we can deliver. If you vote for them, this is what we think might happen. You don't say to people, you must do this for us because it's good for the country. I don't know a political party that's ever won an election. Even the Tories didn't win that in 2000. You know, and they were saying to everybody, you've got to get rid of this unelected Prime Minister from a left-wing party that's ruining the country, that's not... dealing with the European issue, not allowing us a referendum to leave Europe, having all these people from Europe telling us what to do. And people in Britain ain't stupid. You don't go to a country, and the Tories didn't win, did they? No. Just like you tried to tell me the other week that, these minority parties, the populist parties, don't have any influence. Christ, UKIP. Farage has still got more influence in the UK than most outside of the three main parties. Farage is probably the next most important political speaker in Britain now. And you go, what? He's not in command of anything. He hasn't even got a party, but he still has a major voice on everything. He's just now, because he's a clever man and because he's got clever people, he's just about to destroy the banking industry again.
Well, I mean,
what they're doing to him.
He's caused ripples because of his perceived injustice by.
No, more than ripples, Giles. They're going to change the law, and if they don't change the law, they will get the banking ombudsman to sit on these people to say you ain't never doing that again. So that's major political decisions outside of Parliament.
Okay. Alf, once again, well, I mean, glad you're back refreshed from your holiday, by the way.
Oh, no. I was listening to you losing your ears last week. So.
Yeah, well, that's still happening, but never mind. I'm
so anyway, my final say is, for so he don't have to make a decision, they can just sit there and watch the others well around them. And yes, prediction, probably another general election, which the Spanish will hate.
Yeah, indeed. Alf, as always, good to hear from you, my friend.
Thank you, Andreas. Where's Claudio? I haven't heard him.
Yeah, he's on the way, he keeps telling me. So,
right, I thought he was.
But knowing what it's like out there this morning, he could be sometime. As Captain Oates famously once said, he's just popping out for a short walk to open court. He might be sometime, or words to that effect.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much for the call in there. 952 78 4000 is the phone number. Studio@TRE.radio is the email.
Yeah.
You were waving at me, so I thought you were going to say something.
I just want to say, in terms of the date that Sanchez chose for the election, I did criticize it. Not only me, a lot of people in Spain criticized it, simply because it was in the middle of the holiday season, and it was calculated that about between 2.5 and 3 million people would be outside of their home, unable to go to the electoral poll to place a vote, and they have to mobilize the postal vote, which the numbers were about right. I think it was 2.5 million postal votes posted. Yeah, and that was a criticism on the date. Tactically, you could say that something that we didn't see at the time is that basically he had just lost a lot of regional governments, a lot of towns and big cities and so on. And that was going to be the talk for months on end of the results of that election. And he moved to negative talk on the media regarding that election, and moved swiftly towards a general election, which obviously nobody talked about, the regional election, and they moved on to the campaign. So that is reasonable to say, despite that Alf disagrees. In terms of what he said, that they won't go back to the two-party system. The reason why I'm saying that it could happen is because what we have seen in this election is the two extremes, both to the right and to the left, have lost support, and they if they continue to lose support, the end result, I'm not saying it happen next month, but it could happen in 2 or 3 elections, that those parties, if they don't get enough support, if they continue to dissent the support for these parties, they will end up not having a place in the system, like it happened to Ciudadanos. Ciudadanos at one point had 30 odd seats in parliament, and it ended up disappearing. So that is what, I commented on. That, yes, the politics are more fractured now, and there's need for more parties. I don't know if there's a need, but they're there. And yes, we can't see going to a two-party system, but at this rhythm, if they lose support, we may end up going to a two-party system yet again. That's all I wanted to say in reply to what Alf was mentioning earlier.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
And we're joined in the studio. You've just arrived, so I'll get you working. Joined in the studio by Claudia Torre. Claudia, good morning to you.
Good morning, Giles, and good morning to all of our lovely listeners.
You've worked your way in manfully through the traffic, have you?
Indeed, yes. The summer is definitely on its full scale, yeah.
So, We've had Andres' thoughts on what happened over the weekend. Claudio, from your perspective, looks like a masterstroke by Sanchez, or is it showing glaring inequalities or inefficiencies with the system that the party who gets the most votes won't get to form the government?
Well, I think it's both, to be honest. It's a mixture of both. I think it's sad that we're going to have such a difficult situation again with no clear majority, with all the instability that brings. And yeah, I do wish we had a presidential system like France, where with a second turn, whoever wins the actual elections becomes president, not prime minister. I keep seeing prime minister on several big media outlets that insist on calling Pedro Sanchez the prime minister of Spain, which he's not. He's the president. And so yeah, it's quite sad again that the governability of Spain is going to be resting on parties that represent maybe 2% of the population. And the person who has the key to the government is a person who in 2017 led the coup in Catalonia, and who's been 5 years in Belgium.
Self-imposed exile.
In exile, and he is, funnily enough, Spain is in his hands. President Sanchez cannot be president without his blessing. So I think in that situation, it's a sad scenario. I would have liked not so much of who wins, who loses, but just not having this scenario of having of someone in Belgium who's escaping from justice, keeping the government hostage. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, it will indeed. And what do you think it says about the leadership of the Partido Popular? I mean, do you think a more dynamic leader might have had more of a galvanising effect? Because if you listen to Stephen Ritson yesterday, and he was on the balcony, and you could hear the chants of Ayuso in the background, and that's going to be worrying for quite a few people.
Now, of course, Ayuso is very popular, and they were in Madrid, which is her stronghold, and she is very popular. I think it caught everyone by surprise, because all the big sondeos, how do you call them? The polls, sorry, all the exit polls, the ones who had got it right, the last regional local elections, they all gave PP and Vox an absolute majority. However, I think that there has been several failures in the campaign, and of course, what has changed is that a lot of people that used to vote Vox have voted for PP. So then some of that means that they've lost. When they've changed, in some provinces give more deputies than others, so it's the whole arithmetic. And Sanchez has resisted, he's a true survivor, one must say. Even if he lost election, he's kept a considerable number of deputies against all odds. So he's been he wrote a book called Manual of Resistance, and that's what he's done. He's just kept surviving. He's like we say in Spanish, un gato que tiene ocho vidas.
9 lives. British cats have 9 lives.
Oh, here it's seven. Yeah, they say he's a cat with 7 years.
If you've ever been on the
exactly. So he's a real survivor, and he's been there against all odds. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Although many people even a lot of political commentators, both on the left and the right, say that there is possibility of a general election, especially as Puigdemont is very unpredictable. And one other Catalan separatist leaders from Esquerra have been negotiating with the government in the past 4 years and have voted for a lot of their laws. However, it's not the case with the Puigdemont. His theory is chaos, blockage. He doesn't want to collaborate. He's not a collaborator. He's more of a kind of disturber than anything. Disruptor, exactly.
Yeah, interesting indeed.
Would you say, Claudio, that PP won the election?
Well, they won the election technically because they won more votes, and they won in most provinces. But of course, it's not who wins the election. It's who maintains the who can get more deputies. So again, we're going to a situation where parties like Bildu, whose leader is a convicted terrorist, and Esquerra Republicana Junqueras, whose leader is a convicted seditionist, are going to hold the president hostage. In the ideal world, PP and PSOE would have an agreement and they'd let each other govern without having to depend on all these radicals. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen, because with the polarization that we have, and Sanchez has been comfortable in the last 4 years making agreements with these parties. So unfortunately, that won't happen.
So do you think if the PP were to govern with the blessing of the PSOE, do you think the Spanish people will be against that?
Well, we'll have to wait for that one. It's certainly the best cliffhangers, because those bongos mean we've come to the end of the first half of Viewpoint. Back after the national and international news.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
Discuss, challenge, inform, comment, Viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe.
Giles Brown.
Live comment and discussion with studio guests.
Viewpoint.
And welcome back. Joined in the studio by Andres Gallardo and Claudio de la Torre, with you until 12 o'clock today. And Stephen Ritson takes over with Europe Today. 952 78 4000 is the phone number. Studio at TRE.radio is the email. The Facebook page, Talk Radio Official. You can WhatsApp me on +34 645 99 67 95. Looking at some of the headlines, just have a quick look at some of the catch-up, some of the main stories this morning. There's been a dire 2040 health warning from the UK. 9 million people in England will be living with major illnesses such as dementia, diabetes, cancer and kidney disease by 2040. That's according to projections described as catastrophic by health leaders. Rishi Sunak in the UK has hinted he could delay or even abandon green policies that impose a direct cost on consumers, with the Tory right pressuring the Prime Minister to create a dividing line with Labour. He said endeavours to reach the UK's net zero targets should not unnecessarily give people more hassle and more costs in their lives. Climate crisis is to blame for the deadly heat waves that have struck Europe and the US in recent weeks. That's what scientists have told The Guardian. Report from climate experts says both heat waves would have been virtually impossible without global heating driven by burning fossil fuels. Meanwhile, more than 5,000 Britons were stranded on the island of Rhodes after fleeing hotels that were forced to shut because of raging wildfires, not raging wildflowers. Just to let you know, TUI has cancelled flights to Rhodes up until and including Friday, 28th July. British Airways is allowing customers to return home early from Corfu or Rhodes free of charge. Meanwhile, Israeli police have clashed with protesters after the nation's parliament adopted a contentious law to limit the Supreme Court's powers. Critics say the measure, which will prevent the court from overruling government actions it considers unreasonable, is a hard right move to threaten Israeli democracy. Feminists have criticised the campaign by London Mayor. This is the say mate to a mate initiative. Basically, if you have a friend who's making sexist comments, mate is a simple and effective intervention, it says. Okay. Unsolved burglary rates in the UK, an average of 584 burglaries a day when unsolved in England and Wales. The BBC has apologised after one of its reporters asked an inappropriate question about homosexuality during a press conference at the BBC at the Women's World Cup. In Morocco, is it illegal to have a gay relationship? A correspondent from the BBC World Service said to Morocco's captain, and do you have any gay players in your squad? Which obviously wasn't exactly the best question to ask. Meanwhile, the Oppenheimer movie, and we'll be asking the panel about are they Oppenheimer or Barbie fans. The Oppenheimer movie has, my bet is on Claudio being an Oppenheimer fan. The Oppenheimer movie has been accused of waging a war on Hinduism by Indian officials, outraged over a sex scene that quotes from the and excuse me because I'm going to get this totally wrong, Bhagavad Gita, I think, is that the correct thing? Let me know, 952, the Hindu text. Apparently, in the scene, I won't read it. It'll also be a spoiler alert, but anyway, that somebody quotes from a Hindu text during a sex scene in Oppenheimer. Meanwhile, as I said before, finally, tributes have been played to George Alagiah, one of the BBC's longest service and most respected journalists who's died at the age of 67. And those are your headlines.
TRE. Viewpoint with Giles Brown.
Welcome back to the second half of Viewpoint. As I said before, just quickly, panel. There's been a lot of talk about the movies over the weekend. Good to see people going back to the movies after what happened a couple of years ago. Just thinking, a lot of people started talking Barbie, a lot of people talking Oppenheimer. I noticed that neither of you are wearing pink, so I'm thinking you're not big into Barbie.
No.
Oppenheimer.
Quick answer to that.
Oppenheimer.
I don't know what Barbie is all about. Oppenheimer. Apparently, I've heard the reviews. Apparently, it was a very good film. Very long. It's almost 3 hours or 3 hours. But apparently, very entertaining. He doesn't feel very long. That's what I've read about.
That's what you want.
I'd like to go and see it. I'd like to go to the cinema. I've been years since I've been to the cinema, and the feeling of the popcorn and the being in a...
You can feel the popcorn any time you want. You have to be in the
absolutely,
cinema.
Yeah. But yeah, the experience of going to the cinema, I haven't done that for a long time. It's just finding the time to do it. And also the limited times when they show the original version.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like to see it dubbed, a film like that.
Did you ever see... Lord of the Rings did it for me. Señor de Dios, and dubbed. Ay, cuidado, Ban Gandalf, los hobbits, ay, and Borog. It's not quite the same.
No, it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same when Robert De Niro and Al Pacino have got the same voice.
Yes.
So there's limited times when they show the original version, so I'll have to see if I can
as I said before, I'm going to go back and see June. I'm going to see the sequel, the second part of the Villeneuve Dune. But I was just saying before that I asked for a ticket for June, and the ticket person said, "Well, we don't have June." Oh, Dune, June, Dune. Anyway, let's get back to the matter in hand. If you want to get in touch with today's show, then these are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Let's go back to what the Spanish elections and what it means for Spain, what it means for the parties as well. We were talking Partido Popular and the scenes. What they could have done is they could have put a voting booth in Guadalmina, and that would have gone an awful lot because obviously an awful lot of Madrileños make Guadalmina their base, don't they, for most of the summer? Is Aznar down yet? I think he's arriving very soon if he's not here already.
Aznar hangs around Guadalmina quite a lot. He's got a house there.
Yeah.
You'll notice by the presence of
police.
The police.
Yeah, everywhere.
When he's here, there's a lot of police around the area.
But I mean, we talked about it was before the break, before we broke for half time, as it were. Looking at the reaction, on the balcony, a little bit more subdued for the Partido Popular. Ayuso very popular because it was Madrid, and any leaders, have there been winners in terms of personalities in this one? We said Sanchez has proved himself to be pretty much a strategic politician par excellence, calling this election, because he was going to get, everybody thought, he's after the regional elections, they're going to get an absolute leathering, quote unquote. But he's proved himself good at that. Also, we've got Yolanda Diaz, of course. Have I got my name correctly?
Yeah. Yolanda Diaz, yeah.
And again, she timed that quite interestingly. A couple of weeks before the election, she launches her new party, so she was going to come out of it quite well as well. So the people who seem to have been doing the stuff with most of them seem to be Abascal and Vox, who were being seen as potential kingmakers, and perhaps they saw themselves in this role, and perhaps that was a warning. They were perhaps getting a little too confident
the right in general was too confident because all the polls had given them an absolute majority plus the results of the regional elections. But then again, other people are saying that after the pacts with Vox in the regional elections, will that kind of mobilize the left to vote for Sanchez in fear of Vox? Those people that maybe didn't vote in the regional elections where the abstention was higher, now they've voted because they feared Vox. And also, I've always said that if the right wanted to, the constitutional right wanted to beat Sanchez and his alliances with the separatists whose only intention is breaking off with Spain and who don't care about Spain because what they want is a referendum and to leave. That's been so. If they want to beat them, there needs to be unity. Like if, for example, if the PP and Vox would have voted. Gone in one list together, if it would have been a unitarian list, they would have had a big majority. But
when
of
you
course,
say a unitarian list, how
that means going together in the same list. Let's say like there's parties can go together. Like Sumar, for example, was all in one list. It was Podemos, Más País, loads of small left-wing parties of different areas and different sensibilities. They all came together in one list. So that changes it because what this system penalizes also is the separation of votes, because let's say in some provinces you need very few votes to get a deputy, and in other provinces like for example Madrid or Barcelona you need a lot of votes to get a majority. So it's I just feel sad that we're always taken hostage by those who want to break Spain and by those who have terrorist past. For me, that's very sad. But what can we do? The only solution is like for example in many regional parliaments, you need a 5% to be able to have representation. If you don't have 5%, you're not in. And if the electoral law in Spain had that would mean that all these small parties, they wouldn't have a voice simply because they wouldn't reach the 5%. All these Catalan and Basque separatist parties, they represent 2% of the electorate at most. They're out of like 47 million Spanish people, there's maybe 2 million separatist voters. So of course there are a small minority, but each time they keep conditioning. So I don't think the solution is to legalize them, of course, because that would be too radical. But however, to do like in other regional parliaments where if you don't have 5%, you're not represented. As easy as that.
Andreas, you're going to say something there?
I tactically, I don't think that merging PP and Vox into one list would be a good idea, because the majority of the PP voter is quite moderate. It's got moderate views, and that the question I asked you before, if it would be perceived by the majority of people in Spain if they said, okay, you won the election, number of votes, a number of seats, you govern, and you will facilitate that. It's been done before. I know it's not going to happen, and I know that because we are so polarized now that is just a dream. But in reality, if you go and ask the people in the street, they would say, yeah, excellent. If they could agree to do that, they would
completely. And Felipe González, for example, proposed it. He said that the most voted list should govern, and that the second party should facilitate it, and vice versa. And also Feijóo, in the debate, he proposed it to Sanchez. He said to Sanchez, if you win the election, I will facilitate your presidency for you not to depend on the separatists. And he said, would you do that in the case that I won? But Sanchez, of course, didn't accept that. He said we'll sign the paper right now, and I agree that if I come second, I will facilitate you. And he asked him if he would do the same to avoid this deadlock and to avoid depending on the radicals, but Sanchez didn't want to because, of course, Sanchez isn't a traditional socialist. He's made like a revolution in the party. He represents... That's why there's been a lot of division in the Socialist Party and lots of ex-socialist ministers from Felipe González, even because
of the new image, or the fact that he's going to do deals with who doesn't respect the constitution and people who have broken the constitution. Imagine Puigdemont. He said, talking about the other Spanish people in Catalonia, that they had to expel the enemies. So we're talking about a very radical person who is a supremacist in certain way, and who sees people who don't think as him as enemies that need to be expelled. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you're looking at a generation of politicians coming in now who weren't around, or were teenagers or even younger when the Spanish democracy was formed, and so perhaps in a way that González, etc., understood that above all, we are fortunate. Almost 40 years or 50 years on since the death of the dissolution of all the Juan Carlos making those allowing Spain to become a democracy, and perhaps it's being taken for granted. So therefore, in a way that perhaps wouldn't have happened 20 years ago or 30 years ago when memories were still fresh, people can launch the attacks on the constitution because they're saying, because they never actually had to live through the fear and repression and the way that it was.
Indeed, and these parties have been given strength, and they're growing because, of course, the more concessions you give to them, the more money you give to them, the more they grow. Because, of course, people are saying in Catalonia and the Basque Country, we're seeing that this works. We're able to make the government hostage, or the governability lies on us, so we have the power and we can get more money. So, of course, they're giving power to these people like Bildu, for example, who Sanchez said a few years ago before the last election that he would never pact with Bildu because they have a terrorist past, that the leaders of the separatist process that were jailed, that he'd never pardon them, and he's pardoned them. So he's broken all his promises to survive because he will do whatever it takes to govern. He said that clear. He doesn't mind it, and his voters don't mind because he hasn't lost support. He's gained 2 deputies in this last election. So people who vote, his victory is mainly, he's in Catalonia, the socialists in Catalonia are happy with him because they feel that now they're in peace, like he's bought the peace by giving concessions. So the moment, of course, these people, they don't really, I was speaking to a Catalan woman who knows very much about politics, and she says a lot of these separatist parties, they don't really want independence. They use it as a weapon to get concessions and to get money. That's what they want. Independence wouldn't be good for them because they know that would damage Catalonia's economy hugely. So they want to be in Spain, but to get concessions and using the weapon of independence to debilitate the state.
The problem with these concessions is they are in detriment of other regions of Spain. That's where I disagree on. And I don't mind them being financed to the hilt if there is enough money for everyone to do the same, but there isn't. So they become on a position of privilege because they have that key to Parliament, and that. It's not the ideal situation, but you got a party like, cause ideology is being lost in a way in recent times. If you look at the party of Puigdemont, it used to be the conservative nationalists of Pujol. That was his party. Now he's a complete radical, off the wall. And that's the way he's evolved the party from being a conservative party to be what it is now, which we're not quite sure what it is. It's quite incredible the evolvement of ideology there.
952784000 is the phone number. studio@tre.radio is the email. So presumably now the Fierro goes to the king and asks to form a government. What's next then? What happens next?
Well, the king will ask the winner of the election to form government. He can go to Parliament and ask for the vote, or he can decline the offer and say, "Look, I can't make it." Move to the next one, which would be Sanchez. Whether Feijóo will try to do it when the king calls him. If he does it, he hasn't got the numbers. Nobody is going to support him. Vox haven't even said they're going to support him. No. So even if they did, the numbers are not there. So probably they will move on and ask Sanchez. But Sanchez has got a mammoth task to agree with 7 other parties to support him.
And especially not only on those 7 parties, because all those 7 parties can support him. But if Puigdemont doesn't support him, who now is very dangerous because he's the European court has taken away his parliamentary immunity, and now he has lost his immunity. So now Sanchez is he's in the presidency of the EU, the alternate 6 months presidency. So now in Europe, Sanchez is going to have to justify to all the European leaders that he is going to be president thanks to the vote of a fugitive, and so that puts him in a very
I got visions of Puigdemont in a sort of bandolero outfit.
Oh, completely, yeah.
We go live to the lines. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Good morning, Giles. It's Jason.
Hello, Jason.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really want to dwell too much on the far right or the far left. These are all just labels. So it's authoritarianism and totalitarianism. Some people call it like dictatorial politics. But this is the pendulum in the world. The world is gradually sleepwalking in a direction where it is more controlled. What's that repulsive little man called in Israel? Benjamin. What's his name? Benjamin. Yeah. So even Israel now is becoming dictatorial. The problem is it's an intolerance, and the way people do is manipulate this in the guise of like nationalism, the fallout from the migration of people, immigrants. People hijack it and really fan up the flames, and people that were more conservative tricked basically and manipulated down this path. But really, what it is, it's a form of subterfuge. What it is, it's people for political gain manipulating the masses. The UK is the second most surveilled country outside China. So even the UK is more controlled. Europe is more aggressive than it used to be. So is NATO. I never discussed this, but I want to ask all your listeners in a moral sense, why on earth would you send cluster bombs to a war, right, when you know that long after the war's finished, it blows the limbs and the arms and legs off children when they kick around on the floor, these bombs. They're banned in so many countries because they maim and kill children. It doesn't matter if it's a Russian child living in Ukraine or a Ukrainian child. It don't discriminate. It just blows them to pieces. So now I question our morality. Is it okay then that the evil Putin, right, we know he's bad, does this, so we think it's okay, but it's absolutely not okay, Giles, because then in countering one evil, we create a bigger evil when we are the guardians of morality, right? Wrong. Because we are losing our way in the same way the politics is in a dictatorial sense. So is people's humanity beginning to become compromised and twisted. It's absolutely not okay. Not in the eyes of God is it okay, and not in the eyes of any sentient, intelligent, thinking human being. So I'm asking you, why is it okay to send cluster bombs to Ukraine? I'm asking you, Giles, is it okay? Justified?
We were talking. We got another caller on the line coming in. Jason, I know you're impassioned about this.
I'm impassioned about it because they kill people.
Yeah. So, I mean,
and I never discussed it before, and that's why I'm discussing it now.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to steer this one through to Spanish politics because we just had a national election. You see what I'm saying? Got another caller.
Okay. We'll leave it there then.
Thanks very much indeed. Okay. Morning, caller. You're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Okay, Crystal Danker.
Yes,
Totally agree with Jason. He's put it very pithily. And it's a serious question. Cheers.
Okay, fine. 952784000. Back after this.
Viewpoint on Talk Radio Europe with Giles Brown.
Into the last 20 minutes or so of today's Viewpoint, Claudio has left the building. He came in, he made his point, he dashed off. I tell you, who was that? Who was that Mars commentator? It's like the Pimpernel or whatever it was. Cats in Spain having 7 lives. If you want to get involved, let's, because Jason touched on the nerve and then Kate got involved and everybody piles in, so why not? This whole thing about armaments and Ukraine, there's been a lot of discussion about now, bear with me. Is it the US allowing cluster munitions or the UK allowing cluster munitions to Ukraine for the Ukraine forces to use against them, against the Russians who've invaded their country? Jason was asking me what I thought. Well, you guys know my backstory with this one, so you'll be, I mean, my personal views, I draw a line on nuking Moscow, but only a small line. So 952784000. Let me know what you think about this one. Jason saying, unfortunately, these munitions will stay. Well, so will all sorts of munitions from around the place. So will mines. So the mines in Afghanistan. People are still dying from unexploded ordnance from the Korean War, from the Vietnam War. People are still suffering the effects of Agent Orange in the deforestation programs of the late 60s. So people are still getting blown up in Laos because of things from rolling thunder. War is a dirty, messy, nasty business that somebody started and somebody's got to finish. 952784000. This in on the email, that's the word for it. Why do guests go all around the houses talking about wishes rather than dealing with the what now? You can wish for what you want, but you won't but without legal changes and being on the inside of the core politics, then that is all they are. Pipe dreams and unfulfilled wishes. Great band, by the way. What do the guys think will happen in real terms over the next few weeks? As I said, there will be another election, but I've no idea what the timeline for this is and who calls it. Well, I think November, people are saying.
Who calls the general election in Spain is the Prime Minister. And that's, or the President, as Claudia has corrected us. He calls the election. I mean, if it's a repeat election, it'll be around November time.
Just before Christmas.
Or knowing Sanchez, he'll probably Christmas Day.
He would call it in that dead with that puente between the 6th and the 8th.
When everyone is away again, possibly.
When if you're a freelancer or waiting for commission, that's the favourite time of year.
It's quite likely that we will have another election. Whether they'll solve anything, we'll have to see, because how many people are going to change their vote in the next few months. I don't think many will. Let's see what Sanchez can do with Puigdemont. And that's where the key is. I mean, it was quite funny when Claudia was saying, basically we are in the hands of a guy who's wanted by the Spanish justice. It's almost like you're telling a joke, that a guy wanted by the justice is the guy who's got the key to govern the whole country. It's a joke, but that, unfortunately, in today's Spain is their reality, and how much Sanchez is.
Do you think this is damaging Spain's international credibility? I mean, we always used to joke about elections in Italy because there seemed to be an election every second week, and yet here we are in Spain. What's this? The 5th election in?
Well, the last 2 general elections went to a repeat, and it looks as we're going to be the 3rd one. So it's becoming the norm. You call the general election, and then a few months later you repeat the general election. It's quite sad, because obviously we are in a country completely polarized. If you look at the blocks and the percentage of votes, it's obviously we are divided we continue to be divided. We've always been divided in this country, and it's almost a 50% on one side and the other. So on the basis of that, it's very difficult to form majorities and so on. The thing is that Spain needs an overhaul of many things. Education being one. We've passed different education laws over the years, and that keeps changing. The national health needs an overhaul. The doctors are complaining, and rightly so, especially GPs, where they feel that 80% of the time is doing admin work and not treating people. Yeah. There's only 20% of the time doing that. There's a lot of important things that have to be done. The administration has to be reformed. The bureaucracy has to be trimmed down. All of the things there seem to be. I haven't heard anyone talking during the campaign about these issues. It so seems to be in the background. What really matters is that, and nobody talks about that, and everyone is talking about who does the deal with who, to what coalition who will be minister of this and minister of that, but not real substance in it.
So it's all style rather than substance, you're saying?
It has been, and on a parliament with all these parties, even if they manage to get Sanchez appointed again as president, legislating and moving forward is going to be very, very difficult. So if the general election is not called now, don't be surprised if it's called at the beginning of next year, when they realise that it's impossible to get agreement from all these parties.
952 78 4000. In fact, I'll press this button. 1 second. He said that, nothing happened. There we go.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
This is in because we had some by-elections in the UK, and the ULEZ was this. Well, I'll read it. It's coming from D saying, "I'm wondering, is it the ULEZ? I can't remember. It's the I can't remember what it's called. Somebody give me a shout here, 952 78 4000. Wondering if the ULEZ debate commentators actually live in ULEZ commentators actually live out in an outer London borough. It comes down to my right to clean air over your right to drive past my gaff on the way to work. London has numerous tubes and stations, so why do you have to drive into town? Mr. Khan put the ULEZ in his manifesto for the last mayoral election, and we democratically voted for it. Even Grant Shapps wrote to Mr. Khan in 2020, insisting that the outer's expansion is part of TfL, Transport for London funding, and Boris brought it into central ultra-low emission zones. Thank you, Stephen. Boris brought in the central London ultra-low emissions zone. No, it's not a tax on the poor. The poorest can't afford or don't want cars. Drivers have known this for years, and the ULEZ, thank you, Julie, ULEZ is coming in. Yeah, ULEZ, thank you. Coming in. There we go. So again. No, it's not a tax on the poor. The poorest can't afford or don't want cars. Drivers have known for years that the ULEZ is coming in next month, so have had lots of time to change their vehicles. Agreed. This is just the start, with low traffic neighbourhoods, which are just updated cul-de-sacs, and taxing per mile for drivers will happen soon. The future is not electric vehicles. Our roads were built by the Romans and aren't big enough for the amount of vehicles using them. Look around you, there's traffic jams everywhere. You don't have to look in the UK, just look outside the studio. The solution isn't to build 8-lane highways like in LA, even if we have space that induces demand for more people to drive, and electric cars take up the same road space. We no longer have the road space for everyone to drive 2 armchairs and a settee around all the time. That's your car. One solution is electric scooters and bikes, which allow more of us to get about with less pollution and no jams. I'm happy to listen to any other solutions that work for the planet and the amount of commuters using the roads, but we can't carry on regardless. Have a great day from a cold and damp London. Thanks for that. They're bringing new rules on electric scooters to Spain as well. You've heard about this. They're going to, as of 2024, your scooter, your electric scooter, remind me, Andres, that will have to basically. I think it's past basically some sort of ITV, and therefore any other scooter won't be deemed road alert anyway.
Is that right? Yeah, I haven't heard that, but you're probably ahead of me on that.
Must be true. Right then, go live to the lines. Morning, caller, you're live on TRE. What's your name? Where are you calling from? What's your viewpoint, please?
Hi, Giles. It's me again.
Are you again?
And ULEZ, ultra low emission zones, and I think. That's what what's his name on the barge on the Thames was talking about last week.
Rex, you mean?
Of course, Rex, yes, Rexy babe. What they've done is there's been this low emission zone in the centre of London and the traffic flow for a long time. But as I said before, when I was working in Greenwich, sometimes I come out my office door. I was on the Greenwich High Street. And you couldn't see across the road. It was just smog and smog and smog. And what it does, it damages kids mainly with asthma and stuff like that. So the idea is to extend the ultra zone further out. And it's not about stopping people driving into central London, because that will happen. It was about someone living my side of the world. Someone living in Southend could get in their car and drive all the way in to central London, park up, walk to work, whatever they wanted to do, and it didn't matter because all the pollution was in central London, not in Southend. So to stop that, if many people will remember, especially if they're my age, Ken Livingstone, when he first became leader of the GLC, he introduced the fares fare zone, which was about cheap fares inside of London, which meant that people driving from Southend coming into London would have to pay to drive in or whatever. It was like bands and all the rest of it. So what happened, though, which is what always happens, is that the people who paid for that were the people who lived in London. So we had an increase in our taxes by £5. It doesn't sound a lot now, but then there was a lot of money. And then all the Labour councils, because that's what idiots they are, even though I'm Labour, jumped on the bandwagon and they imposed another £5 on top. So, it sort of doubled the taxes for people living in London. And these people living outside of, in Southend, drove to near enough the edge of London, stopped, got on a cheap train, because that's what they were, cheap trains, cheap buses, and went the rest of the journey, which sort of reduced the pollution level. But of course what then happens is that your pollution then moves out a band. So it moved out to the outer London areas, and that's what this ultra-low emission zones are about, because people now drive in, instead of driving to central London, they'll drive into places on the edge of London and park up. So they're getting the pollution. And let's just say, this is not about climate change. It's not about anything to do with that. This is about saving kids from getting asthma and dying. And the biggest single one, there was a woman, I think in Croydon, and her daughter died, and it was ruled that it was because of the pollution in the atmosphere in London. So we can all be honourable about this and say, oh yeah, we've got to stop the pollution, save these kids. But who pays? Well, of course, what then happens is, in order for this to have some feet, there's a charge. I mean, I think it's excessive, but if you've got a vehicle that is over-emitting, you pay £12.50 a day just to have your car. Whether you use it or not is irrelevant.
Yeah.
So you've got to get newer cars. It's pushing it towards electrification. It's pushing it towards hybrids and all the rest of it. So you have to decide. And it's a bit like Jason. You have to decide, what do you want to do? Do you want to try and it will help save the planet, but it's not designed for that. It's designed to save kids. So that's what the ULE said.
Okay.
The problem is, you're going to penalise the people who you're trying to help, rather than putting the tax on people coming into London. Oh yeah, you get in a car and drive, within 25 mile of London, you pay a tax on your car. Modern technology says, like when you're driving on the motorway and they've These people have got the tickets in their window. They don't stop to park. They just carry on driving through, don't they? And automatically, your money's taken. I've just been to Portugal, and it doesn't cost that much, but it's taken off of you without you knowing. So why are you penalising the people where you live rather than penalising the drivers who are abusing the system? That's my only comment about this, and it could be. Again, I forecast that Labour ain't going to win the next general election. This is 92 all over again, and this could be the issue, like it was the tax bombshell in 92. Sorry. Anyway, that's my
Alf,
take on
your threepence has been greatly received. Thank you very much for that.
Cheers, mate.
Take care. 95274,000. A few other bits and pieces coming in on this one. Let's just add to the ULEZ furore. Firstly, a TRE policy, surprisingly good one. It also applies only to 1 in 10 people, and those affected can get grants. Even my 11-year-old car is exempt, so what's the problem? Excuse me. This one in ULEZ, thank you very much. Better public transport, gradually introducing the charge for a necessity. This one as well is... that's from Stephen, letting me know my pronunciation. This one in from Max. Good morning to you, Max. Just saying quickly, can we move on to Spanish politics, something lighter? Perhaps a quick change in whether the UK can get accepted back into the EU as soon as possible in 3 years. Like pressing the reset button on a Marvel film. You know how you have the multiverse. Brexit in the multiverse. Can we go back without too much fuss, if only? Spot on, Alf, because there's another one coming in there, so that's good to have you getting involved with that one. If we really did care about humanity, not just for expanding NATO or testing latest weaponry in Ukrainia, that makes it sound like somewhere where leprechauns live, then we would also care about the proxy wars of Sudan and Yemen and our alien planet, but we don't because there's nothing in it for us. Okay, thanks for that. And that's everything with that one. 5 minutes to go in the show. If you want to get your threepence in, here are the numbers.
To contact TRE, please call 952 78 4000. Email studio@tre.radio. Send us a WhatsApp on +34 645 99 67 95. Message us on Facebook, Talk Radio Europe Official, or tweet us at TRE Talk Radio.
Right then. As it's we're into 5 minutes left of the show, and we want something later. Are you familiar with Trevor Francis? Do you know who Trevor Francis was?
Of course, yes. Footballer.
Indeed.
He died yesterday. Yeah. Sorry to hear that.
First £1 million player.
Correct.
Now, £1 million player now.
Was it Nottingham Forest?
It was indeed. Well done.
Well, there you go. So I'm nearly there.
Yeah, you're nearly there. Very good indeed. Jasper Carrott famously did when he did his BRMB radio sketch talking about phoning competitions. So there used to be a phoning competition. And for today's trip for cinema tickets for two, what are Trevor Francis's initials? You know, so that's... It's a tough one today. Is it 1976? Oh, you're close enough. That'll do. Anyway, so he passed away. First £1 million player.
In Spain, apparently he lived here, or
he was just living in Spain, a place in Spain. But the reason we say about £1 million player because Mbappe, who is the French World Cup winner and plays for Paris Saint-Germain. And so therefore he's used to a bob or two, and he's not happy at Paris Saint-Germain because they are the perennial underachievers. I can see you're very upset about that.
Very,
very upset. Now, you know, he's been linked to a move to Real Madrid because every big player does, you know, and Real Madrid is a machine that eats players. So the Spanish press have been full of, you know, when's he coming? He's going to be coming. It's going to be great. The whole thing.
It's been going on for years.
Every time Mbappe looks a bit, you know, he gets a bit of trapped wind and grimaces. It's like he's coming to Real Madrid. But now, because it's all about money, the Saudi Arabian whatever investment fund or whatever it is fronting them, 285 million.
285 million
to go and play in the whatever the league's called over there, the Live League or the Sport Washing General League secretary and I don't know what it's called. But that, I mean, you know, and Mark, the excellent Mark who was on Hannah's show today, was saying that it totally changes the goalposts. And if you were offered 285 to go and play in Saudi Arabia, Andres, would you take it?
No.
You wouldn't take it.
I wouldn't take it.
You wouldn't take it.
No. Not me.
Not your peak physical fitness that you are.
No, but 285 million. Why anyone wants such an amount of money? In any case, this is not his salary. This is what they're paying Paris Saint-Germain for releasing the player a year earlier. The Paris Saint-Germain, they need to offload him this season, because next season he can walk free, and he can pick and choose the club he wants. So his salary in Saudi Arabia, I don't know what that will be, but eye-watering, I guess.
Tax-free for a start.
Tax-free and everything. So for a sportsman of that caliber, to go to a league, he's only 24, because you would think, okay, Ronaldo's gone to Saudi. He's gone to Saudi, hasn't he? Yeah, but he's 36 or 37.
Oh, practically agent.
So it's in on his way out, and it's well known that players go and cash in the last 2 or 3 years of their career.
I mean, nobody wanted Ronaldo. That's the thing. Nobody in Europe wanted Ronaldo.
Nobody wanted your Ronaldo. But it was offered a lot of money. But a guy at 24 to go to a lower league, I'm talking lower league, very low league, because what's the equivalent of League Two? The Saudi.
It's not. I mean, it's not a great history of football. If you say, I mean, okay,
not even that. But I mean, the quality of football played there. I mean, he's jeopardising his position in the national team if he's playing, against Rochdale United or the equivalent of in Saudi. So for his professional career, it's not a great move. But of course, I mean, you're talking that sort of amount of money. I can understand that he's tempted by the dollars. Incredible amount of money that they can produce.
Well, they can afford it, can't they?
Exactly, they can afford it. But
right then. I think we're almost out of time, Andres. The time swing chariot is drawing near. 12 o'clock. Yes, go on.
No, well done. Thank you. Thank you for having me in your programme.
Some point there. Right then, it has been my pleasure and my privilege to bring you to today's show. My thanks to my guests. The bolt out of the blue that was Claudio de la Torre. They seek him here, they seek him there, they seek Claudio everywhere. He came in, he did his bit, and he went off to fight crime somewhere else.
And we've discovered that in Spain, cats have got 7 lives and not 9.
Not surprised, to be honest with you. the average lifespan of a Spanish cat, especially around this time, is, forget it. They're talking about him going for a year to Saudi and then to Real Madrid for free. That's from my mole on the subs bench.
Oh, okay.
Moving up nicely. Thank you for that one. You know who you are. Right then, I'll be back. Andres, thank you for coming in today, and have a wonderful. I hope you enjoy the rest of this summer, and we shall speak indeed very soon indeed.
Thank you very much, Giles. Thank you again.
And this show will be repeated it will be repeated at 7 o'clock. We got through a whole show without my ear falling off, so that's always good. And Stephen Ritson is up next. Have a great rest of your day.
Expressed on Viewpoint by invited studio guests and callers do not constitute an opinion endorsed in any way by Talk Radio Europe.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit TRE.radio.